Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the session, The Next Era in Talent Management, Leveraging a Once-in-a-Lifetime Strategic Shift. For this session, Ceipal is joined by Brian Solowski, COO, Gudent Global, and James Lucier, Executive Vice President, ProcureWise. But before we launch into today's session, there are just a few housekeeping items to cover. First, each session will be recorded and available on demand through Ceipal's website. A follow-up email will be sent to all registrants with the recordings and other relevant material. Audience questions can be placed in the Q&A tab or session chat window. Our speakers will try to address them by the conclusion of this session. If there is not enough time to address all of the questions, our speakers will work with us to publish a Q&A as a follow-up. Please note that this session will end promptly at the scheduled time. At that point, we encourage you to visit our agenda tab and explore our other topics and speakers in the 4 different tracks. If you do not visit the agenda tab, you'll automatically be redirected to the next session in the same track. That's it. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the speakers for today. As COO, Brian leads the implementation of Gudent's global strategic vision and operational delivery globally. Brian has included on the SIA North America Staffing 100 list every year since 2019. Moderating the session, we have James Lucier, Executive Vice President, ProcureWise. He is responsible for executing go-to-market strategies, building client-driven growth, and growing the success of ProcureWise. And with that, over to you, James.
Okay, thank you, Spring. Good morning, Brian.
Hey, good morning, James. Thanks for having me today.
Well, thank you. I'm really glad to be here with you, my friend, and an industry leader, recognized member now several times, I think, of the Staffing 100 with SIA, Brian Salkowski with Gudent Global, everyone. Brian, Gudent recently commissioned Everest Group, a leading research firm, on some tremendously insightful research that they conducted and kind of culminating, I guess, in a report. The title of this session, The Next Era in Talent Management, Leveraging a Once-in-a-Lifetime Strategic Shift. So that's what we're going to be talking about this morning. But can you help us kind of set that up with just a bit of an overview, a kind of an entry to the discussion, some background on that research?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, thanks for having me, James. Looking forward to this discussion. And I'm probably going to share a lot of what the audience already knows here in terms of the tee-up. This has been a tremendously dynamic environment over the last several years, both some good and a lot of true challenge and heartache as well, from pandemic to extreme supply demand imbalances, talent scarcity, the great resignation, and now we're dealing with war on the international stage. And all of these are permeating throughout the marketplace, but we're seeing very real impacts in terms of the talent marketplace. And as with everything, crisis provides both risk and it provides opportunity. So we partnered with the good folks at Everest Group to take a quick look at this. There's a lot of our thoughts embedded here, as well as their very concrete, detailed and thoughtful research to talk about how do we take this once in a generation circumstance and leverage it, take it as an opportunity to better position for the road ahead.
Great. Thank you for that introduction to the research and in our discussion. And just to let the audience know, at the end of our discussion, we're going to put up a URL in the chat window so you know where to go to get a copy of that report. And right now, we're going to kind of dive into the 5 key shifts that are really outlined in that report and get Brian's insights on them. And they were all described with a letter E, so it's very alliterative here, right? And so there are 5 E's, and the first E was empower. And that's what, so one of the elements is empowering. And so what does that mean? I think it's described in terms of stakeholder experience, right?
That's exactly right. And it does make it easy, the 5 E's as we call it. So the first one is empower, and it's all about empowering through experience. And so when we think about the relationship, the historical relationship with contingent labor, for lack of a better term, was often quite casual. It was an opportunity to loosely support as needed with extra arms and legs in light of a project. Heavy savings, heavy focus on savings and cost management, and so the dynamic, if we went back in time, is very different than the dynamic as it is today, where we can see from enterprise to enterprise, industry vertical to industry vertical. It's the extended workforce is actually now part of the essential workforce, and that relationship is no longer casual; it's fundamental to the organization. And recognizing that, it's incumbent upon progressive organizations to embrace this opportunity to engage the various stakeholders from an experience standpoint. And we start off by calling out that there's three personas here. There's the contingent worker, there's the hiring manager, and there's the broader contingent workforce, I should say, stakeholders. And to accommodate that, we have to look at this experience opportunity much the same way as we would how the full-time workforce is engaged. So from the contingent worker, is it easy? Is it mobile? Can they quickly access? Can they have an experience that is empowering in terms of how they engage? Is it personalized for them? That's a big component. Personalized in terms of recommendations, personalized in terms of experience and intake. Is there opportunities to learn and grow, right? When we evaluate opportunities, these are key considerations such that it's no longer full-time onboarding, contingent onboarding. It's all about best practice onboarding and how we engage that workforce. If we think about the hiring managers, that persona, how do we keep it digital? Make it seamless, easy. If we think about how easy B2C, business to consumer applications are, this experience needs to be that easy for the hiring manager as well as that contingent worker persona. We need to give them visibility, and we need to keep it digital. And then if we think about the stakeholder community, which is wide and varied, right? It's not just HR, although there's a predominant focus on talent right now. It's not just procurement. It's also finance, it's IT, it's security. There's a broad range, legal risk. There's a broad range of very interested, valid stakeholders. And so how do we give them enterprise visibility? How do we ensure that it's agile, scalable, and flexible to meet those business needs? So there's a lot of empowerment opportunities across the various communities that participate.
So not to put you on the hot seat on this, right? Or bring, but maybe I'll ask you as we go along, if you don't mind, kind of for each area. I mean, you talked about the three personas and here, and all these different things that go into the experience that they have. But maybe could you pick one or two things in any of those areas, any of the personas, any of the experiences, where guidance taken, it's right, own its research and its thought leadership and put it into a new best practice. Next era.
I would go back to the contingent worker persona. And the reason I start there is because I think historically it's been the biggest gap when we talk about the dynamic today, this shift. There was a pronounced talent focus throughout that. And for too often, and frankly, I think to the industry's detriment, the candidate was the forgotten man or woman within the equation. So it was about empowering it for the buyer community, for the enterprise, and not about the candidate. So we've worked really hard with first our talent marketing team to develop really progressive outreach strategies, leveraging our employer value proposition, our clients' value proposition, to look for opportunities to connect with them, create opportunities for attachment to their organization and to us, and then carrying that through into the onboarding process. And I say us, we work with a vast community of supplier partners. So it's also partnering with them to ensure that the candidate experience, whether it comes through our organization as an employer of record, whether it comes through their organization, that ultimately we're creating that attachment with the end customer and that the experience is similarly delightful.
Okay, thank you. So another E is for evolve, right? And So tell us what you see evolving in terms of, I think in the report, it's discussed things evolving in terms of how work is organized and how work is paid for.
Yeah, that's exactly right, James. It is about how we organize work, and specifically, if we think about the contingent workforce, historically, again, if we go back in time, preponderance was through traditional staffing partners, and not that there's anything wrong with that. There's a reason that it is the size and scale of an industry that it is today. But as these shifts have occurred over the last several years, it also creates new opportunity. And that opportunity is to look at the way that work is organized, the way that it is evaluated for optimum sourcing strategy, and the way that it is structured, which I'll come back to in a moment. So probably the first most pronounced shift in terms of the evolve is the evolution of direct sourcing as a viable, in fact, highlighted channel of engagement for contingent workers. And I think there's a number of reasons for this. It's not new. In particular, in Europe, it's been a dominant sourcing channel for years and years now. But with the challenges that we're facing right now around talent shortages, the need to separate and differentiate compared to competitors for resources, it provides some pretty unique opportunities. So what we're talking about here is leveraging that employer's brand to attract external talent. And so it offers some cost advantage, although that's not the driver. Again, this is a talent-focused, talent-heavy market, but it can reduce the times to get that talent into the organization. It can create a better opportunity to create aligned purpose and meaning with the end organization in our outreach efforts for the organizations. And it can be flexible across different communities. So not just the broad swath of non-employees, but can be hyper focused on retirees, alumni. It can leverage freelancer marketplaces and be used to engage independent contractors, which is very important in today's market. So it offers that flexibility. So that's one element. The other is in terms of organizing work. And I've spoken about this multiple times in the past, but as organizations have shifted to remote, or if not remote, hybrid, which is becoming more and more common, the thought becomes, what's the best way to engage with our teams and ensure effective management and engagement with that staff? And so we've seen a pronounced shift towards team-based hiring. And that offers a number of different benefits, right? So it's not just individual, but we're building a work group. So some sense of community there when we're all remote to tackle a particular project, plan, or initiative. It also allows us to structure the work towards more outcome-based. So the adoption of statement of work or services procurement and managed services programs, which is certainly a key focus area for Guiding Global, continues to accelerate. And it's accelerating not because we're promoting it, because it is a meaningful adaptation of the market to business need. When someone's sitting next to me, I can manage their effort. We can go side by side. When they're a world away or half a world away, being able to judge based on outcome, being able to include them in a team-based project, and measure, score, and succeed based upon deliverables or key outputs on a critical path is very helpful for the individual, for the team, and the organization.
So I'm going to take just a little deeper dive here, maybe.
Yeah, please.
Talked about the 3 personas, right? And now we're talking about organizing work differently. But when you do organize the work differently, it affects all 3 of those personas, right?
Absolutely.
All of those groups, the talent, the organization providing the talent, the organization utilizing the talent, right? So there must be some challenges that you encounter. Is there a challenge or 2 you can speak to?
Yeah, these are
many.
I should have counted on you for great questions, James. No, thanks for that. And of course, there's challenges. Just because we're identifying the 5 E's doesn't mean that any of them are easy. All of this takes focus, strategy, and effort associated with it. So if we talk about challenges, part of it is just change management. That's the most obvious one, right? We're talking about a different way. So if historically it's always been engaging a contingent worker, time and hourly, time and material type basis, and now we're restructuring the work towards an outcome. Helping a requester, a hiring manager to do that can be a challenge in and of itself. How do I organize the work? What should be the key points where we're checking in? What are those milestones that we're looking at? What accountabilities do we need to build into that statement of work for the provider? What accountabilities do I need to address within this? So that's just one example of some of the change elements. The other I'll point to is technology, right? Making sure as we're managing a work team here that there's the proper tools via VMS or other plug-in system to properly manage that, give the visibility as it relates to the project progress, the milestones, the financial elements therein. These are just a couple examples, and I know we want to talk about the other three, so I'll be cognizant of time. But also the CWs, the workers, the associates who are engaged to support this. We do want to make sure that we're offering the value of being part of that project team. And I mentioned learning and development earlier. That can also be part of that messaging there, because they're able to see a project life cycle. They're able to build into their personal resume the milestones, the outcomes as personal achievements related to, or team achievements related to the work output there. So there's a number of opportunities, but they're just that, they're opportunities. We do have to work through them because initially they present as challenges.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Appreciate you exploring the challenges there. And maybe one more question in this area, and I will keep a watch on time for us.
Thank you.
So thanks for the reminder. And this doesn't have to be about a challenge necessarily that you've helped a client face, but can you give us, without mentioning the particular client, but an example of, we've gone from an old paradigm to the new era where there is a shift that's been made, or there's a shift that's in process around evolving, maybe specifically how the work's being organized or something like that.
Sure. So there's a consumer products company that I'm think of immediately, and they were early, to their credit, to embrace this shift in terms of organizing more work towards outcome based. But in terms of how that's manifested from a practical perspective within the organization, as they're organizing more work this way, it's led to an active discussion as it relates to roles and responsibilities. So they have Guided and Engaged as the partner, and we're pushing more of this work out through a request for proposal, helping them organize it. And it's creating questions in terms of what should be the role of the client supply chain organization. How do they need to shift as we're doing more through a program to accommodate this? What does their role become? How do they elevate to look at more strategic sourcing, overall strategy from a supply chain perspective, and better leverage a program aligned to this new way of procuring work? And I would absolutely call that a work in progress. These have been live discussions and very appropriate given the shift that's underway. So I don't want to describe it as a negative or contentious. It's the natural evolution as they've outsourced an element of buying. They're increasing the volumes with this strategy. What does that allow, and what does that mean for their team? How does this become an opportunity, a shift for them to elevate and move up the organization in terms of their ability to contribute to both business and organizational issues?
Thank you. I think we're hearing the word strategy a lot, and strategic, and it makes me think, as we continue through the discussion, how maybe even much more important the role of the MSP is in kind of the everything that happens here, within the contingent workforce, right? And serving all of the personas there. But let's move on to the third E, that stands for elevate. Yep. And, as I recall, This is around the area of advanced analytics and AI-enabled analytics. A bit ago, you kind of talked about technology and platforms, and of course, that brings in analytics. So can we expand on that conversation some about enhancement and analytics?
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason that we call it Elevate is it is an opportunity to your tee up was perfect. Right? As we think more about strategy, we think about how do we get beyond the tactical. Not that there's not a need for tactical delivery, there absolutely is, but how do we elevate beyond that? One of the key ways and opportunities is to take a more focused look at how data is utilized and analytics specifically to provide deeper insights, inform long and medium and short term decision making, and help model if then scenarios to create good outcomes for the business and for the stakeholder community. So my team's heard me describe it this way before, but historically, again, I keep using that term, but as we're talking about moving into the next era, it's hard not to compare and contrast with the past. So in the past, so much of the analytics that we got, I would consider as descriptive. They were an opportunity for us to take a look at what happened. How much did we spend? How many people did we onboard? How many people did we offboard? What was our cycle time? And there's good value in that information. As we've gotten deeper into it, the next step is asking and answering the question, why did it happen? So drilling down to root cause. It's taking longer. Have we been able to isolate the root cause and assess the variable factors that are impacting that, such that we can answer that question? Because that helps us build plans, whether it's countermeasures or enforcement, where we have good trends and opportunities. The next level, and as you talk about AI, this is a key component therein, is predictive. What's likely to happen next? So as we look at the organizations and we ask those questions about how we continue to elevate our delivery, it's all about using those analytics and those insights to come back and answer those questions about why things happened, what's likely to happen next, and build in intelligence into the process. So active recommend, if I think again to the stakeholder communities, if I'm a hiring manager, how do I get intelligent matches and recommendations into this? If I'm an enterprise stakeholder, perhaps a hiring manager, what's the best outcome from a sourcing strategy? What are the variables that will impact this, and what are the decisions that can be made to improve that? So if we understand and we can look at probabilities, if we take this approach, if we go to market at this rate, here's our probability. This is likely how long it will take. If we adjust these other factors, we can do that as it relates to how we structure our supply base as well. And then the utilization of chatbots and natural language to engage and make that process as seamless and as real time as possible.
And I'm thinking about the report. I actually just looked something up too.
By the way, I realized I had to catch myself. I said elevate. This one's
enhance.
5 E's. This is enhance. Right? How we enhance it through.
Well, I'm going to keep us on track with the 5 E's.
Thanks for not correcting me. I corrected myself. I'm like, oh, that did sound right, but.
Yeah,
5 E's, we risk that, right?
Right, absolutely. So analytics really can enhance, right, everything from experience to performance. And I just want to kind of bring out, I think there in the report it mentions like specifically the 3 areas: workforce. You've talked about examples of workforce and supplier analytics, and also spend analytics. And boy, years back, everything was really about spend. Is spend, how much is that coming back in, that we're in this talent-driven market, right? And the talent scarcity. And we have lots of other things that are, top of mind, some a little bit more recent, like diversity in the contingent workforce. How much do you hear from clients about spend analytics and spend still being at the forefront?
It's absolutely at the forefront, but I'll use the opportunity to compare and contrast again, using the same terminology, descriptive. Here's what you spent. Okay, there is some value in that. But knowing that there is a talent focus right now, the question is spend analytics. Are we directing our spend to the right places? Are we putting our money that generates the best possible outcomes for our business? Is it driving quality outcomes? Are we meeting the deliverables? Are we getting an ROI on that spend that's equal to or greater than the monies going out the door? So there's a tremendous value to that, and a lot of that analytics feed back into sourcing channels. So are we spending our money in the right places? Is this the optimum sourcing channel for this? What is the ROI associated with that spend? Is it producing the talent outcomes that we want? And it gives us an opportunity not only to look backwards, but look forward and make directional changes to enhance those future outcomes.
Okay, thank you for addressing that. And we have feedback. Is that coming from me? I guess not. It's stopped. So, okay. So to move on to the next E, which I think sort of gave a
preview, although I just mixed the words. So
it's elevate.
Yeah.
And elevate is described in terms of shifting to a more service-enabled technology model. So can you talk about that some with us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is just that. So I got the topic right, the words wrong, but so elevate's really about service enablement and digitalization of the approach. So if we take a look at again, contrasting past to future, so many point solutions, whereas in the future, the next opportunity is really about ensuring that there is a digital ecosystem that addresses the opportunity, that addresses the needs of users, provides an interface, provides insights, as we just talked about here, and opportunities for engagement and for sourcing. So that what does that actually mean? So if we think about the platforms that are in place right now, like a VMS, it's an opportunity for a VMS not to just transact a procure to pay workflow. They've been able to do that for a very long time. But there's an opportunity for it to act as an integration hub and at plug and play with other meaningful add-ons in the ecosystem, whether they be sourcing channel, qualification channels, engagement opportunities. There's an opportunity to facilitate mobile enablement. So not just your browser click through or email, but a truly mobile experience for those three personas. To provide greater flexibility and scalability, quick deployment, quick adjustment to meet the ongoing and changing needs of the business and changing market, which is how we started this off. So huge opportunities as it relates to a services model that is fully digitally enabled, that is an integrated ecosystem that has the opportunity for us to be seamless and create a whole user experience, whichever the three personas we talked about, through a single point of entry and single channel.
We have a couple of questions in the chat window I want to come back to. I think that where we have a little Q&A at the end, I'll ask a couple more questions around technology.
Love it.
Okay. All right. So let's go on to the 50, and that's embrace. And, DEI's been on the radar for a lot of enterprises for a long time, but, largely around their full-time workforce, and not so much, if at all, around their contingent workforce. And so as a result, I'm not kind of quite sure of how much attention the whole workforce solutions ecosystem has paid to DEI in the past. We'll say, before maybe a year and a half to 2 years ago. But now everybody is working on that, and I think that's a big area of embrace.
It absolutely is. And embrace is the right word because it's being held close by so many organizations. And I really believe for the right reasons. I'll start off by just acknowledging and agreeing with what you just said. Historically, I've used that term a lot today. But organizations would look at, for the contingent workforce, that diversity is a function of supplier diversity. So their employers ownership and control. And it's not to say that there's not value it's just that is first level. And there's a number of drivers right now in the market that are opening up enterprises' willingness and desire to take this much, much further and for good outcomes. So what's happening now? Well, we start off talking about talent shortages, talent scarcity, recognizing that there's huge opportunity to do good for the business by addressing those talent shortages, but also do good for the larger community and for the workers by being inclusive in hiring, bringing in individuals from diverse backgrounds and accessing a wider and in many situations an underutilized talent pool. We've seen and continuing to see an acceleration of new thinking about where and how talent can be sourced. And with the broad concept of we want to be as inclusive as possible. It's good for the associates and it's good for our business. So that's happening right now. As we talked at the beginning, great resignation, what's happening with individuals quitting at record rates. Diversity, equality, and inclusion is a great opportunity to engage with your population, full-time population, but again, in terms of breaking down those barriers, also with the contingent population, there's ample evidence that this type of engagement enhances employee satisfaction, ties them more into the organization's purpose, and ties them to the mission, and so it offers benefits again for hiring manager, worker, and CW stakeholder. The next one that I would call out is really important, and I don't think we can underscore it enough, and it's about innovation and ideation. And simply put, the more diverse viewpoints that are entered, the more experiences that are brought to bear has a tremendous output on influence on creativity, and how that creativity manifests itself in innovation in the field. So it's not always giant innovation. It can be small improvements, incremental gains, but creativity that feeds the business, drives process improvement, creates differentiation. And oh, by the way, people like to be on a winning team, brings back that attachment as well. And then the last one that I would point out is related to alignment. So supplier diversity, workforce diversity and inclusion, but with that, it's looking at partners and alignment and commitment. And we see this all the time as we're engaged with our customers, but also prospective customers that want to know what our organizational values are. Are we committed to the same purposes? And so it's an opportunity to align with and better demonstrate the importance of our values permeating in the organization. So it's good for business as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I personally have seen Guidant be a real leader in embrace and specifically really in DE&I, especially in the last couple of years, but even before so. And so I'd like to take a moment just to mention to our audience that Brian posts a lot of really thought leadership about this on LinkedIn that I've read, which has taken me to the Guidant site many times, great resources there. And I want to give you a chance, Brian, to talk about an initiative or two that the Guidant has around diversity, because I know you have some things that are really happening very successfully around diversity.
Yeah, there's more than one. So I'm happy to be able to pick and choose. So just I'll start off by at an organizational level. Guidant's parent company is Impellum Group, the Impellum Group. And across our entire enterprise and all the brands that fall therein, we've created a council and an active organization called Unity. And it's about bringing these concepts to life. So within Unity, we've established a number of, we call them BRGs, business resource groups, that are all about creating those opportunities for further bonding between our team, learning across the organization, but also identifying areas where we can make a real impact on our people. So across the organization, you can probably guess some of these. There's multicultural, there's military, which includes veterans, families, active duty, etc. And gender. It goes the full range. And how do we bring that to life? Well, I can mention one that just happened last week. I actually unfortunately missed it, but I saw the output, and it was our military business resource group, which identified a real opportunity for us to be a more accommodating employer to our reserve team members. And so it started with an observation. It led to some research, and now there's an active action to say, hey, how do we address this within our plans, comps, benefits, and promote it accordingly? So it's by no means a one and done, but it just shows how taking that active initiative to say this is important to us can bring some real tangible results that are good for the company and good for our employees.
So we've gone through the 5 E's, at least in some bit, right? And I think as we talk about them, they overlap some.
They do,
right?
Absolutely.
Of course, the candidate, the personas that you talk about, they're involved in all of them. Your experiences are involved in all of them. We had some of the questions. There were several in the chat window that were, as I mentioned, you were talking about technology and use of technology, and of course, you're thinking about Guidant as an MSP. So I'm going to pull a couple of those questions maybe to get together. So one of them would be in terms of the candidate experience. Right? How, without maybe naming a technology, and sort of giving too much away, we'll say, but what is Guidant specifically doing as an MSP to, whether it's using technology or in some other way, that is from kind of the basis of these 5 E's here, elevating, enhancing, embracing the candidate, doing things that are going to bring a better candidate experience.
Yeah. So just listening to you ask the question actually prompted me to make an important point that I don't think I did earlier, which is I talked about the importance of digital, a seamless process and point of entry. And it is critically important. There's a reason I said it, but that doesn't mean that there's no need for human touch. And so it's really about balancing the efficiencies, the gains of digital. It's the direction of travel, obviously, but also recognizing that we are talking about people here. We're talking about bringing associates in. I started off by talking about that this is the workforce. It's not an add-on to the workforce. It's a fundamental piece. And human touch is important. So some of the things when we talk about candidate experience are making sure that we maintain that human touch. So I'm not even going to go technology. I'm going to go the other way. How do we engage to understand clients onboarding, flow that through to the supplier community, make sure that they have all of the details so they can communicate effectively. If I think about scenarios where we're acting as the employer of record, you may like this, James. That team is actually, their job title is employee ambassador. It's not onboarding processor, it's employee ambassador. And I think that really speaks to the approach that we take. These are their ambassadors. We're guiding them. We're welcoming them into the organization, into our client's organization. And it's not a single point. That ambassador is assigned to that employee over their entire life cycle. So from initial onboarding, ongoing, if they need help, they know who their ambassador is, and it's who they go to. So it's not a tech answer. It's actually a balance of bringing the human touch in to enable a tech digital-driven process.
Well, I think sometimes, and probably the audience would agree, is that technology can be used for a lot of different things. And one of those things is that it can automate processes that allow us to bring more of the human touch in
Yeah.
where it's most
If
useful. Right?
if it frees up administration, et cetera, we can divert that back, those energies and efforts back to more value added, meaningful interactions. Absolutely.
Right. And I did take an ambassador down.
Employee ambassador.
We're going to be
That's
using that. Okay. So we're almost at a conclusion, and I think about the conclusion of the report and really talking about bringing together all the findings of the report and some recommendations. But I think the last paragraph or two, as I remember from having read it now a few times. I read it when it first came out, I think I told you, and then more recently this week to prepare for today. But it talked about this next era. It's a journey that we're going on together.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, the workforce, the staffing firms, and the MSPs, other service providers, the clients, the employers. They're all in the audience today. So as we're coming to a conclusion and you think about all the things that we talked about, maybe you think about that report, or just a thought that you want to leave the whole group with, right? What's that one thing that you want to leave today for people to think about that next era, that this really is a once in a lifetime shift?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and how can they be a part of it in whatever role that they sit in? Workforce, talent supply, client, employer, right?
So I'll leave with a parting thought, but I also want to underscore something that you said in the run up to the Q&A session, James, which is that there is a lot of overlap and connectivity between the different elements. And I think that's important to reinforce. It's absolutely true. But if we think about, for example, empowering the experience, but we haven't taken any steps to better organize the work, that empowerment doesn't matter if we're not hitting the right places and building the right talent communities. It doesn't drive the right outcome if we're not inclusive in that and generating the right viewpoint and experience diversity within our organization. So these things do very much intentionally overlap, and it's not one, it's not all. So my key take. So thanks for bringing that up. My key takeaway to conclude is some of these things have been forced upon us. So when the talent shortage, I don't think anyone actively sought to create. It's been forced upon us. So some of these elements are reactive. The shift to remote and hybrid, that was forced upon us by the pandemic. So the way of organizing work, more outcome based, that was a necessity in many circumstances versus a deliberate choice. So the option available to all of us is to become much more deliberate and strategic, that word you mentioned before, in terms of how we approach this. So we may have gotten a taste, we may have done a few things here, they're working well, there's more we can do. It's about building that plan, looking across those dimensions, all of them, to identify the levers, the investment opportunities, and understand how we can proactively solve for business and organizational issues versus just reacting to them.
Well, thank you, Brian. Thanks again for joining us today. Thank you for your friendship. Thanks for the industry leadership. I have to apologize to the audience. You see the guitars in the background. Brian was going to take us out on a jam session. He'll have to be back for the next Ceipal Connect. Spring, back to you.
Thank you, Brian and James.
Thanks,
it was great having you both today. I'd like to thank everyone for joining in. We encourage you to visit our agenda tab and explore the other topic and speakers in our 4 different tracks. If you do not visit the agenda tab, you will automatically be redirected into the next session on this track. Thank you both again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.